This old Marshall 2204 has had some issues over the years. Let's see, back in 6 of 19, I had this amp come in the first time. A previous tech I'm reading the problem descriptions and stuff. A previous tech, and I have used that word loosely, had installed a terrible effects loop and had removed about half the original resistors and all the original film coupling caps. Amp put back to stock using Wema film coupling caps, Murata ceramic caps, new old stock Pyre resistors where possible, and Vichy resistors where Pyres could not be sourced. Filter caps have been changed to F&Ts, good, but had been done wired incorrectly, bad. Filter caps rewired and grounded properly. Original input jacks and master volume pot damaged by previous tech. God, this thing was a nightmare. New cliff jacks installed and properly wired. New CTS master volume installed, 1 meg audio taper. Some junk Marshall labeled Chinese EL34s were weak. Good match pair of Mullard reissue EL34s installed and biased correctly. Knobs were all cracked. Reproduction knobs installed. Originals returned with amp for feature collectors. Tolex peeling on rear panel. Mesh panel detached due to bad effects loop installation. Tolex reglued properly. Mesh reattached. That was in June of 2019 when I first had this amp come in. And then it came in December of 19. Had a bad solder joint on the master volume pot, which was wire was vibrated by unplugging guitar cable, caused signal to drop out, resolder connection. I don't see how that's possible. I installed that master volume pot, but if I say that, I did it. I gave him a discount because I apparently made a mistake. Original output jacks worn out, not retaining plugs. New cliff jack, UK jacks installed. Old jacks returned with amp. Okay, so apparently last time it came in, there was a problem with the master volume, which I gave him a discount on just in case I missed it the first time. It's come back in here now, almost a year and a half later, and it says no low end or no bass. So I plug it in, and I'm expecting to do a video on troubleshooting lack of low end or bass. Maybe the bass pot's cut out, maybe there's something going on, lack of low end overall. Take it out of standby, and this is what I hear. Let me go from the lav mic to the phone mic. So let's get back to this amp. I have the lav mic unplugged so you can really hear what's happening in the room. Out of standby. So let's troubleshoot that first. The first thing to do is we're going to pull the phase inverter tube. 30 minutes later, I discovered that the only problem the amp had was noisy old preamp tubes. It already had the power tubes replaced, and dirty tube sockets. It had some dirty pots, dirty tube sockets. It had just gathered a little bit of dust. So I've got some new tubes ready to go in, but first we're going to clean these preamp sockets because the lack of low end the owner reported was caused by the same problem that was causing that sound, and that was just a noisy tube / bad contacts on the phase inverter socket. So I'm going to flush these out with some ISO, just right into each preamp tube socket. Let that soak down a little bit. Now we're going to flip it around. And this is where it gets really high tech. Take a little bit of paper towel, kind of bundle it up, and I stuff it in each preamp tube socket slot on the other side, which will kind of wick all the stuff out of the preamp sockets. That orange is not too bad. It's mostly old flux, but flux on the pins like that can prevent good contact, and it's going to get dirt out as well. Do all three, and I'll pay maybe particularly close attention to the phase inverter socket, which is where we're getting all that noise. Let me do the V1 again. let's see what colors come out. All right, phase inverter. Let's see, can you see that? See that dark stuff there? That was stuff that was between the pins of the tube and the metal cups, or whatever you want to call them, in the tube socket itself. Some more gunk out there. V2, a lot of orange. We'll do that one again. And V1, still more funk. So I'm going to repeat this process a second time. I really want to get this very, very clean. All right, let's see what's coming out of the phase inverter now. Much less, though it still has ISO in the socket. So I'm going to fold this around and get some fresh wicking. V2, much better. Again, flip this over, expose some fresh paper towel to wick some more. I'm not pushing it in so far as to get any fibers from the paper towel in the sockets, just pressing up against and letting gravity and wicking action do the trick. Get a lot of the funk nasty out. It's a highly technical term, the funk nasty. All right, now on the phase inverter, very little, if any. V2. Very, very slight. And V1. Almost nothing. So now let that evaporate. It'll evaporate on both sides. You can see some moisture here. That's isopropyl alcohol, and that will evaporate in the next 10 minutes. Once that is all evaporated completely, and I could hasten the process with the heat gun, but I'm not going to in this case because I've got to do some clerical stuff while this evaporates. Then we'll put some new preamp tubes in and power it on and do a quick check. And if everything is healthy at that point, I've got a fun comparison to do between this restored / slightly modified actual 2204 and a client's Seriatone 2204 that just came in. It'd be interesting to see how they sound compared to each other, don't you think? All right, all the sockets are cleaned. All the isopropyl alcohol has evaporated. New preamp tubes in place. Current production Mullard CV4004s for V1 and V3. Got a tube store preferred series 7025 for V2 because this tube can handle the higher voltage on the cathode in this position that many of the current production Russian tubes cannot. And let's take it out of standby. Oops, wrong. There we go. I've got the going to the high gain input with the master up at first. Some white noise, but no noise when I move the tubes in the socket. Just the bare slightest microphonics on this tube, which are almost unavoidable in a Marshall 2204 or 2203. But I've got the master halfway up and the preamp volume at 2 o'clock. So let me turn the master way down for this part of the test because my wife is upstairs doing a Zoom thing. All right, that was me moving the volume pot on my guitar. Got some DC present there. Let's see if that's the tube. Okay, a little bit of off-camera drama. When I first powered this back up, there was a lot of DC on the grid and put a lot of noise on the volume pot of the guitar. It was only apparent in the high gain channel. And I'll show what that was. I've already fixed that. I'm going to take the amp out of standby. And all the is gone. If I manipulate the tube sockets, there's no gonk in the output. If I tap on the tubes, just the slightest microphonics on V1, and that's quite normal in these amps. I've got the master up quite high right now, but the preamp level is down quite a bit because my wife is doing a Zoom call, so I can't do much on this. But let me turn the gain down for this part of the test and the master down a little bit. There was a as I moved the volume pipe before. Now that's gone. That's all I can show right now because she's on that Zoom call. But sometimes when you have leaking DC, it's a tube, and sometimes it's a problem in the socket. In this case, back in 1970, 80, whatever this amp is, I don't remember, they installed this 1 kilovolt 10 picofarad cap, which I can't really show you in focus, in here, and it was from the plate to the grid of the high gain triode. And it was, that old ceramic disc cap just began to leak DC, and so it happily went from the plate to the grid. Now that is a cap that they put in there for suppression of high frequency noise or radio signals. And if I find that I think this amp needs it, I will replace it, but I won't do it plate to grid. I prefer to do plate to cathode to get the same effect. And the reason is that doesn't add capacitance directly to the grid, which means that the guitar, as the guitar volume rolls down, that capacitance won't play a major role in rolling off highs, which means you can still turn the guitar volume down and get a nice natural response out of the amp just with lower volume. If you have too much capacitance from grid to ground inside the amplifier, so just like having a tone cap in your guitar, as you roll your volume down, you lose highs. So if I find that this amp needs it for stability, I will replace that with a better version of that. But let me turn the master way down. As I said, I can't really do anything more than that right now, but you will hear this amp very soon at a proper volume. I'm going to compare this to that Seriatone. Now that Seriatone is in here to be made into a much higher gain, much more tonally flexible beast. But we'll start by comparing the stock Seriatone to this restored Marshall. And the only differences between this and a stock 2204 is I used a 4.7K instead of the 10K for the V1B cathode, which just gives, the V1A cathode, which is the second gain stage, which just gives the high gain channel a bit more gain, a good bit more gain, and gives quite a bit more gain to the low gain channel. I'm going to go even farther in that direction on the Seriatone because I don't have to worry about vintage. Does it do the sound the owner wants? But when it comes to things like this, I try to respect vintage where possible. For those looking at this and saying, what's he talking about? It's got all those WEMA caps, those red modern caps. Those caps sound fantastic.